Hey, I'm Josh. I'm a friend of the Polhemus family, and I'd like to take a few minutes and reflect with you on Kyle's life and how that connects to Kyle's legacy. First of all, I want to share with you his life verse and the verse that gave him meaning and hope to his life. Jesus is walking along with his disciples, and as he went along in John chapter 9 and John's gospel, we read these verses. He saw a man blind from birth, and his disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" They give him two options. It's either he's been bad or his parents have been bad, right? Well, this is the verse that I want you to hear. Verse 3 in John chapter 9. Jesus said, "Neither this man sinned nor his parents, but this happened so that the works of God might be put on display in his life." Now, that question of why is this person suffering, that's typically asked. It's our default mode to think that, most people think about suffering in terms of karma. Good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people. If bad things happen to you, you must have been a bad person, or you either that or you came from a bad family. Well, there's two observations about this verse that we need to see. First of all, suffering, Jesus says, is governed by God's will. This happened so that, he says. In other words, all of our suffering and pain that we face in this life, it's not meaningless. Pain was not a part of God's original design, and yet all pain and suffering in our life is governed by God's will. It means he controls it, he monitors it, he channels it. It means that a Christian can honestly say that I'm suffering and God's mad about it, and he's done something in history to deal with it and to eradicate it forever. And I can know that his will governs that pain in my life today. You can hear that expressed in Genesis chapter 50 when Joseph says to his brothers, after he endured great suffering at their hands, "You meant this for evil, but God meant it for good," right? And so I'll say this again, God is in charge of all suffering, and Kyle's suffering was never for nothing, right? It was always so that. Which leads me to the second observation, and it's this. Suffering is an opportunity to display and to further the redemptive work of God in our lives. And so in other words, it provides us with an opportunity to glorify God in a particular unique way. Jesus said, so that the works of God might be displayed in your life. So here's the thing, when the disciples asked Jesus about suffering, they asked him the why question. He didn't answer the why question. Instead, he gives this radical gospel perspective on suffering. And what he says is that it's an opportunity to glorify God in your life. Like through your suffering, you can highlight the works of God. You can magnify the value of who Jesus is and the work and the promise that God has made to you through Jesus. And so, in other words, what you do with your suffering, he says, it can glorify God as the treasure that he is for you in Jesus. And that, my friends, is how Kyle lived his life, with that meaning and with that hope. And so it's also how the Polhemus family is living today as they carry out Kyle's legacy. Might seem like quite a challenge to be able to live like that. But listen, it's not impossible if you get the who question settled. Okay? If you know who Jesus really is. He's provided the answer to all of our suffering and all of our pain. He's powerful enough, he's good enough to keep his promises and to deliver us from our suffering. He will restore everything that's been broken by the curse of sin. If we get the who question settled, it's absolutely possible to live each day with confidence and joy and hope, no matter what suffering comes our way.